Here's a song that will get your heart rate up. Every time I sing the word up, reach for the stars. Every time I sing the word down, touch the ground. The rest of the time, march with your knees high. Those magnificent men in their flying machines, they go up to the up, up, they go down to the down, down. They enchant all the ladies and see all the scenes with their up to the up, up.
Welcome to the Powell River Airport in Powell River, British Columbia, Canada. Home of the Westview Flying Club and also home to my amphibious seaplane, a Searey that I've called the Spirit of Mackenzie. The build's been underway for more than 6.5 years now, and at this point I'm 3 months into my self-imposed schedule of 6 months to get the build finally completed, the certificate of airworthiness awarded, the test piloting done, a period of 25 hours, and then enjoy some recreational flying in the 32 lakes in the area and over the Salish Sea, the body of salt water adjoining coastal town of Powell River. So please subscribe to my channel, give me some likes if you think I'm worth it, and follow along as I try to get all these finicky little jobs done, meet the challenges, crush the problems, and enjoy a few laughs along the way. I'm Bob Grantham, and welcome to my channel. Hello viewers, and breaking news indeed, yes, from Test Pilot Corner. My producer here, Sammy, has just handed me this news release from Chris Hadfield's organization. Chris, you will remember if you've been following along my channel, episode 2 of Test Pilot Corner, Chris was invited by yours truly to be my test pilot for the Spirit of Mackenzie. Chris, of course, is Canada's preeminent astronaut, former military test pilot, space shuttle pilot, and International Space Station commander. And he's been so gracious as to reply to my invitation. A wonderful, positive letter. Positive in the sense that it's pleasant and kind and supportive. But negative in the sense as his answer is negative. Obviously, Chris has got a lot on his plate with his own work, his foundation work. He's been, most recently I saw him on TV at one of the, was it Jeff Bezos, or perhaps it was Richard Branson's launch. Chris acted as a color commentator on one of the newscasts. Plus, apparently he's writing a book out this fall, The Apollo Murders. He's been good enough to tell me in this nice letter. So, unfortunately, Chris is not available. He would like to be, and he's very supportive of the channel, wishing us all the success with the Spirit of Mackenzie. So thank you very much to Chris Hadfield and his Chief of Staff, Cheryl Ann, who was so good to pen this letter to us. Hey, Sammy, isn't that nice? Hey, I think Chris has got a dog? I bet he does. He's a nice man, and nice people have pets. Yeah. So, Chris Hadfield is out. Haven't heard yet from Harrison Ford. Still looking for some positive news there. Maybe also positive, negative, but still any news is good news. But here's the third and last celebrity test pilot candidate that we're going to invite to be the test pilot for Spirit of Mackenzie. This is actually not one person, it's a group of people. And I'm sure you've heard of the 7 Degrees of Freedom of Kevin Bacon. If not, Google it. You'll find it fascinating. But basically, it's about how people are closely interlinked, and with just 1 or 2 or 3 or 7, in the case of Kevin, in the movie industry, 7 degrees of freedom, you can make a personal connection to someone. Well, with this group of test pilot candidates, there's 2 degrees of freedom between me and them. which is pretty damn close. So I expect a positive response from this group when they get their invitation. 2 degrees of freedom, how did that work? Well, Spirit of Mackenzie started being built in the town of Mackenzie, which is on the Williston Reservoir. I think it's the largest, if not second largest lake in British Columbia. And a friend of mine, he's a pilot and a contractor. His name is Jim Bellavance. And Jim got involved with a project a few years ago. It involved recreating the bouncing bomb dam busters of World War II. An English professor was trying to uncover the secrets of the bouncing bomb, and he reinvented it, so to speak, and he needed to find a place and a method for trying out his experimental bouncing bomb. Well, for whatever reason, they came to the Williston Reservoir near the town of Mackenzie, hired Jim Bellavance and his company to build a temporary dam. They hired a company called Buffalo Airlines to provide the plane. I think it was a DC-4, and they equipped it with this replica bouncing bomb, and they flew sorties over Williston Reservoir, and they figured out how to bounce this bomb off the water surface without killing themselves or anybody else or any wildlife, and successfully blew up Jim's dam. So, from me to Jim is 1 degree, and from Jim to Buffalo Airlines is another. So, Buffalo Airlines out of Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, you are invited to provide a test pilot for the Spirit of Mackenzie. Now, Buffalo Airlines is very famous in their own right, other than providing a plane to drop bombs on British Columbia. They were featured in a television series, Ice Pilots, Northwest Territories, I think it was called. And their general manager, Mikey Bryan, very colorful, wonderful character, has his own YouTube channel called Plane Savers, really interesting, check it out. And the patriarch and president of Buffalo Airlines, very famous man, a pilot whose career goes back decades, flown all sorts of planes, many of them amphibious or float plane, otherwise connected to the water, Buffalo Joe. So, Mikey, Buffalo Joe, your organization is most graciously invited to provide a test pilot, color commentary, planes, bombs, whatever you want to provide to support the test pilot period for the Spirit of Mackenzie. Coming soon to a YouTube channel near you. So, checking out the fuel system today. That means all the fittings and the hoses, looking for possible loose connections and potential leaks. And I'm going to start with the fuel tank area, because that's the first part of the fuel system I worked on. There's the fuel tank, 23 US gallons. Very secure, snug inside the hull, and very limited access. On the top of it are 2 fittings, a vent and a return hose, and also the level sender. Those are pretty easy to look at. But unfortunately, underneath the tank are 2 fittings. Now, I remember when I connected those 2 hoses up to those fittings on the bottom of the tank, it was difficult. There's very little space to get in there, and probably even less now since I put in the actuators and the seats. And I remember leaving a note in my online build log that I really got to check one of those hose fittings to make sure it's tight before putting any fuel in the system. So let's go down in there with this 65-year-old body, probably 10 kilos heavier than it was when I first put those hoses in there, and see if I can get access. Well, not see, I have to get access, even if it means cutting a hole in the hull and coming up, because that fitting has to be tight. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to check that the hose on each of those 2 fittings is properly on the fitting, and that the hose clamp is tight. I know it's a slotted screw. Which screwdriver I'm going to need, depending on the angle and the room I have, I don't know, so I'm going to have these all close at hand, because once I get into this very awkward position, I know I'm not going to be wanting to come out and reach for a tool, which is 5 meters away. No room for a hat in here, so here we go. This is going to be ugly.
They enchant all the ladies and see all the scenes with their up and their down.
The problem is that with my glasses on, it's not quite in focus. And with my glasses off, it's not in focus. So my Mark 1 eyeball is not well equipped to handle this.
Down, they're frightfully keen, those magnificent men in their flying machines. They can fly upside down with their feet in the air. They don't think of danger, they really don't care. Newton would think he had made a mistake to see those young men and the chances they take.
Oh, I think my hair needs my hat. Oh boy. In addition to being extremely uncomfortable, all my blood has rushed to my head. Every part of my body seems to be leaning on a piece of the frame as a pressure point. But at least I got the hose. And this hose is the actual fuel hose, the forward, it's the forward point on the tank, which I know is the fuel running to the gasculator. So it's the start of the fuel system. The one that's slightly in behind, and it'd be more awkward to get, is the one for the sump, so that you can pump out the very bottom a couple inches or a little bit of the gas in the tank. You can pump it out using this hand pump and check it for water, get the dirt out. So I'll be going in as soon as I get my breath back and the blood runs out of my head back down to my heart or lower. Oh boy. Did anybody ever say that building a plane is for the young of body? Well, they should have. It doesn't help to be packing a few extra grams, only grams on the frame. Okay, so for this fitting that's on further in, believe it or not, I'm going to use a shorter screwdriver, otherwise I just can't get my wrist in there. So, loosen off the hose clamp first, push the hose as far onto the fitting as possible, put the hose clamp back on, tighten it up. Here we go.
Magnificent men in their flying machines. They go up to the up, they go down to the down, down. They enchant all the ladies and see all the scenes with their up to the up, and their down to the down, down. Up, down, flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground. Up, down, they're frightfully keen, those magnificent men in their flying machines. Up, down, flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground. Up, down, they're frightfully keen, those.
This is analogous to a doctor doing open heart surgery, except doing it through the intestinal cavity. With the heart up here, I've opened the abdomen, stuck my head in, worked my arm up past the stomach, the spleen, the kidney, somehow got past the diaphragm. I'm not a doctor. And I'm securing with a clamp on the artery, I'm putting sutures in. That's what it's analogous to. The head in the abdomen. Where's my nurse?
Sit men in their flying machine.
Oh, believe it or not, it looks good. This is Sultry Bay, the southern end of the Sunshine Coast Trail. The trail comes across the top of those mountains there and then comes back down into the cove where the car ferry departs southward towards Vancouver from Powell River.
Make your journey safe and pleasant. Please take a moment to listen on how to be safe and speak. There's a lot of safety knowledge that Searey crew members and all members of our crew are certified by French.
In good weather, calm seas, be a fun place to bring the spirit of Mackenzie. Buzz the berries. Well, it's going to be a big day in the airplane factory today. The spirit of Mackenzie is going to experience its first fluid exchange, so to speak. Big point in this relationship, obviously. I'm going to try testing the fuel system out for leaks, starting with putting a few gallons of gasoline into the fuel tank, where of course it'll go to the bottom of the tank and then immediately start flowing under gravity into the gasculator, which is the first strainer in the main fuel line, which goes up to the fuel filter. So if I only put a few gallons in, it shouldn't rise very high up into the fuel lines. I can then open the bleed valve underneath, and with this little cup catch whatever dirt or water or whatever might come out. That's the whole purpose of the gasculator, as I believe. And then I can also pump out the sump up in the bottom of the tank, the other connection in the bottom of the tank, by pumping this little pump, which through this valve here will pump the sump once again into the little container over the side. Okay, we'll give that a try with a couple of gallons and cross my fingers, knock on wood, that we don't have any major fuel spills out the bottom. You can see that I've put some absorbent cloth under the fuel pump, the fuel filter, the gasculator, and under the bottom of the tank fittings themselves, just in case, clean up any mess. And also the white cloth should give a quick indicator if there's any leaks. Okay, here we go. Let's see how easy it is to pour. I've got a little strainer in this funnel, just to make sure I don't pour any dirty gasoline in. Okay, that's not very much, but let's just see if we have any disastrous leaks. Safety first. Okay, let's check underneath the fuel tank and see if we got any leaks with just that little bit of fuel in the tank. I know this isn't the most brilliant thing to do, sticking this expensive phone underneath the most likely leak points on the tank, but what else am I gonna do? Well, I don't see any splashes onto the phone itself. And I don't think I see anything. So far so good. I say, from the bottom of the gasculator. So, we have fuel, bottom of the tank. It's flowing through the two bottom connections. Well, at least one for sure, to the gasculator. And it should flow, if I can figure out this two-way valve, when I pump the sump as well. I don't know why. Anyway, I'm going to put this back in the tank. So here's one of the joys of building an experimental plane. It's experimental, and you get to modify things. If you think you can design it better than the original kit designer, or you're working in an area outside his boundaries and between some other piece of equipment. In this case, I thought that if I could have a hose connected to the bottom of the gasculator, and remember the gasculator is not part of the American suite of equipment that would have come with the kit because it's not required in America. I thought if I could hook a hose to the bottom of the gasculator, then that would help me when I'm testing the gasoline through the bottom of the gasculator, and I could then pump it out the side through this spigot using this little fuel pump, which also would be connected through a two-way valve to the bottom of the gas tank, connected to the sump. Well, I didn't really think that through. It's not really possible to connect the hose to the bottom of the gasculator. So now what I've done is I've taken out that two-way valve. I put in a one-way valve. It only is connected to the bottom of the sump now. The gasculator, when I test it, will have to go into this little cup and then be disposed of, as opposed to potentially coming up and going out this fuel bulb. So I've taken that out. Now when I try pumping the fuel bulb, trying to pull gasoline up from the sump, nothing's coming. And most likely that's because this hose length here is not primed. It's full of air, and it would only have gasoline up to the bottom of the, or to the level in the tank in that hose. So perhaps what I should do is just leave this fuel sump pump device until I've got the tank full. Yeah. But anyway, like I say, the joy of experimental airplanes. I've now taken out that two-way valve that I decided to put in. I put in the one that came with the kit, the one-way valve, and we'll leave it at that for now. So to conclude this day, I'm just going to put the remainders of the 5-gallon jerry can of gasoline into the tank, which will then be about a little less than a quarter full, and let it stand overnight and come back tomorrow and check for leaks. Yeah, then maybe we can look at turning on electric fuel pump and pumping the fuel up to the engine and then into a beaker. Sounds like a plan for tomorrow. They say that it's not catching the balls that it's difficult to juggle, it's throwing them, because the perfect throw makes the catch easy. That's why you're supposed to concentrate on the throwing. The catching comes natural. Thank you, my appreciative audience. So the gasoline has sat in the tank overnight, about 5 gallons. Yeah, 5 gallons I put in there, which is just less than a quarter of a full tank. It sat in overnight, and there was no leaks out of the bottom of the tank or the gasculator or any of the fittings or hoses at that bottom elevation of the fuel system. So now what I'm going to do today is try to turn on the electric fuel pump and force the gas out the system as far as the inlet to the mechanical fuel pump, which is mounted on the back of the engine behind me. About there. So I've disconnected the incoming fuel hose from the mechanical fuel pump, and I've rigged up this little juice container. Remember, juice container with red lid is not for drinking. It is the red stuff. It is the gasoline. Do not drink the Kool-Aid from the red container. Okay, so what I'm going to do here in a moment is I'm going to flip on the switch for the electric fuel pump, which is located down there, and see how well the fuel flows, if at all, into the pitcher. Okay, this is always an exciting time when you mix electricity and fuel for the first time. But the idea is not to mix them. Have them working in parallel, but totally disconnected. Otherwise, we're going to have a disaster here. Yeah, so I'm going to turn on the electric fuel pump, and the fuel should come out of the bottom of the tank through the gasculator, the filter, the fuel pump, through this inlet hose to the mechanical fuel pump, which I've disconnected, and into the pitcher. The pitcher with the red lid. Do not drink the red Kool-Aid. Remember that, children. Okay, here we go. So, turn on the electrical system.
Generator.
And of course the trouble announcements are made, as they should.
Here.
Okay, everything's working so far. Now I'm going to activate the electric fuel pump. You hear the electric fuel pump. Now it's probably got fuel in it. It stopped. Sounds like there's fuel coming. We have fuel! Okay, electricity, stay in your place. Give the fuel some room. Excellent, excellent. I'm so excited. That looked pretty good. At some point at a later date, I have to do a full fuel flow test. I have to prove to the government with a written signed form that I've done a flow test, that the fuel pump can provide the required amount of fuel to the engine while the plane is in the steepest climbing angle. But that'll come later. Right now I know I've got the fuel pump working, the fuel system works. Haven't seen any leaks yet, but I'll go check again. And I know I have fuel at least for the first engine start. Sparks! Is that a wrap? Oh, you are the best producer ever. Thank you. Thank you for your support. You're just thankful I wasn't playing the bagpipes today. Next time.